The saying necessity is the mother of invention rings true when we talk about the Great Wall. It was built because it was absolutely necessary. Let's break down why this monumental project took place. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to dive into one of the most iconic and massive structures in human history, the Great Wall of China. But why was it built in the first place? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore today. In the past, the Great Wall of China was constructed to strengthen the country's northern frontier. Throughout history, the Great Wall has been the scene of several conflicts and clashes between the Chinese and different ethnic groups, such as the Mongols during the Ming Dynasty, the Xiongnu during the Qin Dynasty, and the Khitans during the Song Dynasty. Now let's discuss a little bit about the design of the fortifications. It was not a simple wall. The Great Wall was made up of three main parts: passages, signal towers or beacons, and walls. Let's explore one by one. The first one is passes. Along the wall, passes served as important strongholds and were typically found in strategic locations like crossings with trade routes. Numerous passes had massive stone and brick barriers, with earth and broken stones used as filler material. The tops of the bastions were between 13 and 16 feet broad and around 30 feet high. There were ladders for soldiers and access ramps for horses inside each pass. The interior parapet, known as Yuqiang, was a low wall that was roughly 3 feet high and kept humans and horses from slipping from the top. The gate inside the pass was not only a point of entry for merchants and other people, but it also served as a way for the garrison to send out patrols or launch a counterattack on raiders. There was usually a massive double wooden door behind the gate arch. Each door's inner panel had locker rings and bolts installed. Each gate had a gate tower that doubled as a command post and watchtower. It was often built of wood or bricks and wood and ranged in height from 1 to 3 stories or levels. The gate was protected from direct attack by a wencheng, a semicircular or polygonal parapet that was constructed outside the gate where an opponent was most likely to attack. The luocheng, an extra line of defense that extended past the most strategically located wengchengs, was frequently topped with a tower that was used to monitor individuals outside the wall and to control army movements during conflicts fought there. When soil was dug up to construct the defenses, a moat was frequently created around the gate entry. Another part of the wall is the signal towers or beacons, beacon terraces, smoke mounds, or kiosks were other names for signal towers. They served as beacons, fires or lanterns at night and smoke signals during the day, but they also employed other techniques like banner hoisting, clapper beating, and gunfire. Signal towers were independent high platforms or towers that were frequently erected atop hills for optimal visibility. Soldiers' quarters, stables, sheepfolds, and storage spaces were located on the lower floors. Now, walls. The defense system's most important component was the wall itself. With an average height of 23 to 26 feet, or slightly lower on steep hills, it was typically 21.3 feet broad at the base and 19 feet high at the top. Depending on the building materials that were available, the wall's structure changed from one location to another. The walls were constructed from tamped soil between planks and pilings, adobe bricks, pebbles, a brick and stone mixture, or wooden boards. Some portions replaced man-made buildings with natural features like cliffs and gorges, while others employed pre-existing river dikes. While many eastern ramparts, like those in Badeling, were faced with stone and had a variety of additional structures and devices, the walls in the western deserts were often straightforward constructions made of adobe and rammed earth. Brick or stone arched entrances known as wan were positioned at tiny intervals along the inner side of these walls. There were brick or stone steps inside each wan that led to the battlement's summit. There were duwuku, or 7-foot high crenels, on the top, pointing outward. The lower portion of the duwuku had tiny openings, or loopholes, through which defenders could also fire, while the upper portion had enormous openings for watching and firing at attackers. A crenellated platform rose just over the top of the wall and protruded from the side facing the assailants at intervals of roughly 650 to 1,000 feet. Shooting assailants from the side as they tried to mount the wall with ladders was made possible by the platform, which also offered a commanding perspective during combat. There were pufang, or simply built shelters, on a number of platforms that served as storm shelter for the guards. Weapons and ammunition could be stored on certain 2- or 3-story platforms, similar to signal towers. At battling, they were typically 2 levels with the lowest level housing over 10 soldiers. There were also drainage ditches on the walls to shield them from damage by excessive rainwater. One of the biggest construction projects in history was the Great Wall of China, a vast barrier built in ancient China. In reality, the Great Wall is made up of multiple walls, many of which are parallel to one another, that were constructed over the course of 2 millennia in southern Mongolia and northern China. The Ming era is when the wall's largest and best preserved form was built. It stretches 5,500 miles from Mount Hu near Dandong in southeast Liaoning province to Jiayu Pass west of Jikan in northwest Gansu province. About 1/4 of this wall's length is made up entirely of natural barriers like rivers and mountain ridges, and it frequently follows the crest lines of hills and mountains as it winds across the Chinese countryside. The tiny remaining portions are ditches or moats, but the majority of the remaining portion, about 70% of the overall length, is an actual masonry wall. The wall is still one of the most amazing constructions on Earth, even though large portions of it are either in ruins or have vanished entirely. The fortification system was largely constructed during the 7th and 4th centuries BCE. The first emperor of a united China during the Qin dynasty in the 3rd century BCE, Shi Huangdi, Qin Shi Huang, linked several pre-existing defensive walls into a single structure. The length of the wall, excluding its branches and other secondary portions, was traditionally estimated to be about 4,160 miles, with Shanhai Pass in eastern Hebei province along the coast of the Bohai Gulf of Chile serving as the wall's eastern terminus. Aerial and satellite monitoring eventually demonstrated that this wall extended constantly through a large portion of the province, despite government-sponsored investigations that started in the 1990s revealing sections of the wall in Liaoning. In 2009, it was shown that the Ming Wall was longer overall. If you guys are still here, then let's dive into the history of the construction. It was not as smooth as we think. The Great Wall evolved from the various castles and boundary fortifications of several Chinese kingdoms, as we have already covered. For a number of centuries, these kingdoms likely cared just as much about defending themselves against their immediate neighbors as they did about the possibility of barbarian attacks or invasions. The early building of the wall started when the state of Chu began building a permanent defensive system around the 7th century BCE. This structure, also called the Square Wall, was located in the northern region of the province that served as the kingdom's capital. Other states adopted Chu's strategy between the 6th and 4th centuries. A massive perimeter wall was progressively built in the southern portion of Qi state, employing areas of impassable mountain terrain, freshly built bulwarks, and existing river dikes. The Qi Wall ended at the Yellow Sea's coasts and was primarily composed of stone and earth. To prevent an invasion from the southwestern states of Zhao and Qin, a wall system was constructed in Zhongshan State. The Wei State had 2 defensive lines, the Henan, meaning south of the river, and Hexi, meaning west of the Yellow River walls. The Qin State and western nomads were repelled by the Hexi Wall. It was enlarged from the dikes on the western boundary of the Luo River during the reign of King Huai from 370-335 BCE. It concluded at Guiyang in what is now the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, having begun in the south close to Jiangjuan Cave east of Mount Hua. During the last years of King Hui's reign, the Henan Wall, which had been constructed to defend Daliang the capital, was expanded and restored. Additionally, the Zheng Empire constructed a wall system, which the Han state reconstructed upon its conquest of Zheng. Both a southern and a northern wall were finished by the state of Zhao. The southern wall was primarily constructed as a barrier against the Wei state. Following Shang Yang's d. 338 BCE administrative restructuring, the Qin state became the most powerful of the 7 nations in terms of both politics and military might, but it was regularly attacked by northern nomadic groups the Dongyu and Lufan. As a result, the Qin built a wall that passed northward along the Liupan Mountains from Lintiao to the Huanghe, the Yellow River, to protect the kingdom against attacks by northern factions like the Donghu, Linhu, and Lufan, as well as by the Qi state in the south. The Yan state erected 2 distinct defensive barriers, the Northern Wall and the Yishui Wall. As a line of defense against its 2 principal adversaries, Qi and Zhao, the Yishui Wall was extended from the Yai River's dike. It ended south of Wenan and started southwest of the capital, Yai City. The Northern Wall was constructed by the Yan state in 290 BCE along the Yan Mountains. It began in the northeast near Zhangjiakou in Hebei, crossed the Liao River, and continued to the ancient city of Jiangping, present-day Liaoyang. During the Zhangguo Warring States period, this was the final section of the Great Wall to be constructed. Shi Huangdi, The first Qin emperor united China by completing the acquisition of Qi in 221 BCE. Since the fortifications between the former states only acted as barriers to internal administration and movement, he ordered their demolition. In addition, he dispatched General Meng Tian to fortify the northern border against Xiongnu nomadic raids and to connect the Qin, Yan, and Zhao wall parts into the so-called 10,000 li long wall. 2 li is equivalent to roughly 0.6 mile 1 km. This 10-year construction phase started around 214 BCE. Conscripted laborers and hundreds of thousands of soldiers worked on the project. But following Shi Huangdi's passing, the Qin dynasty collapsed, leaving the wall mostly unguarded and in poor condition. Then, the Han dynasty contributed to the construction of the wall. The wall was reinforced as part of a larger offensive against the Xiongnu during the rule of the Han Emperor Wudi 14187 BCE. The Great Wall also aided in the development of the commercial route that became known as the Silk Road and the exploitation of farmland in northern and western China starting at that time. The Hexi Wall, also called the Side Wall, was built between Lake Lopnur now in Xinjiang in the west and Yongdeng now in Gansu in the east over the course of 20 years beginning in 121 BCE. Strong points were positioned along the wall with a beacon every 5 li, a tower every 10 li, a fort every 30 li, and a castle every 100 li, according to Jian Hanjian Juan, correspondence of the Han. The majority of the wall's construction during the Dong Eastern Han Dynasty 25 to 220 C occurred under Lu Zhu Guangwudi, who in 38 commanded that the Great Wall's 4 parallel lines south of the Hexi Wall be repaired. In addition to providing security, the Great Wall centralized authority over travel and commerce. The Great Wall was expanded and restored under the Bi Northern Wei Dynasty 386-534-535 CE to stave off assaults from the northern Wan and Khitan tribes. A portion of the Great Wall was constructed south of Changshuan in 417, the 8th year of Ming Yuandi's rule 409 to 423, spanning more than 620 miles 1,000 km from Chicheng now in Hebei to Weiyuan now in Inner Mongolia, according to Weishu Ming Yuandi Ji History of Wei. Chronicle of Emperor Mingyuan. In addition to the Great Wall, a smaller, thinner rammed earth wall was constructed around the capital during Taiwudi's rule 423 to 452. It formed a circle around Datong, extending from Guangling in the east to the Huanghe's eastern bank. The Dong Wei dynasty constructed a section of the Great Wall in what is now Shaanxi province in 549 after relocating its capital to Yi in the east. The Bei Qi Kingdom 550 to 577 initiated a number of large-scale construction projects that were almost as wide in scope as the Qin dynasty's building projects in order to fortify its northern boundary and thwart the Baizhu's invasion from the west. Only 3 years after a peace on the northwest frontier was constructed in 552, the emperor ordered the hiring of 1.8 million laborers to repair and expand other sections. The building was situated between Datong in Shaanxi and the south entrance of Jiong Pass, which is close to present-day Beijing. In 556, a new fortification was set up in the east and extended to the Yellow Sea. The following a massive fortification that stretched eastward to the Yellow Sea was established in 556. The next year saw the construction of a second wall inside the Great Wall in present-day Shaanxi. It started around Luoying, east of Piangguan, and went east across Yanmen Pass and Pingsing Pass before concluding near Xiaguan. A section of the Taihang Mountains was restored in 563 by the Baiqi Emperor Wuchengdi. The region surrounding Longguan, Guangchang, and Fuping in Shaanxi and Hebei is where that portion of the Great Wall is located today. The inner wall, constructed in 557, was restored in 565, and a new wall was added that began near Xiaguan, stretched east to the Jiong Pass, and then connected to the outer wall. Approximately 900 miles of new and repaired portions were added throughout the Baiqi period, while towns and barracks were periodically built to garrison the newly additional parts. The Emperor Jing began a huge repair program on parts of the wall located in the former Baiqi kingdom in 579, beginning at Yanmen in the west and ending at Jishi in the east, to prevent invasions of the Baizhou kingdom by the Khitan and Tuju, a group of eastern Turks. During the Sui dynasty from 581-618 BCE, the Great Wall was repaired and upgraded 7 times to protect the country from Tuju attacks. When the Tang dynasty succeeded the Sui, China's military power grew significantly. The Tuju were defeated in the north, and the empire expanded beyond its original borders. As a result, the Great Wall became less important for defense, and further repairs or extensions were unnecessary. During the Song dynasty from 960 to 1279 BCE, however, the northern Liao and Jin peoples posed a continuous threat. The Song rulers had to retreat south of the older sections of the Great Wall built during the Qin, Han, and northern dynasties. Eventually, the Liao from 907-1125 and Jin from 1115-1234 dynasties took control of many regions on both sides of the wall. When the Song rulers retreated even further, past the Yangtze River Changjiang, repairing or extending the wall was no longer possible. Only minor repairs were made once in 1056, during the Liao period, and these were limited to the area between the Yangtze and Huntong rivers. In 1115, after the Jin dynasty was founded, two defensive lines were constructed at Mingchang. The older wall, known as the Wushu Wall or Jinyuan Fort, ran west from a point north of Wulanhada, winding through the Heilatu Mountains, turning north and then west, and eventually ending at the Nuanshui River. The second line was the New Mingchang Wall, also called the Inner Jin Wall or Jin Trench, built south of the old one. It started from a bend in the Huanghe in the west and extended to the Sangari Songhua River. After that, during the Ming Dynasty 1368-1644 BCE, rulers continuously reinforced and repaired the Great Wall to protect against further Mongol invasions. Most of the efforts were concentrated on restoring and strengthening the walls originally built by the Beiqi and Beiwei dynasties. Most of the Great Wall that exists today was constructed during the reign of the Hongzhi Emperor. Beginning west of Jiang Pass, this section of the wall was divided into two lines, the inner and outer walls. Numerous strategic fortresses and gates were built along the wall, including Jiang Doma and Zijing passes, the closest to the Ming capital, Beijing. These three passes were collectively known as the Three Inner Passes. Further to the west, there were Yanmen, Ningwu, and Piantu passes, referred to as the Three Outer Passes. Both sets of passes played a critical role in defending the capital and were typically well guarded. When the Qing Manchu dynasty between 1644 to 1911 or 12 took over from the Ming, they adopted a new approach known as huiru, or mollification. This strategy aimed to pacify the leaders and people of Mongolia, Tibet, and other regions by not interfering with their local social, cultural, or religious practices. As a result of this approach, the Great Wall was repaired less often and gradually began to deteriorate. Folks, it was all about the history of construction of the wall. Now let's discuss its traditional significance. The Great Wall has been deeply embedded in Chinese mythology and popular symbolism, and by the 20th century it became a national emblem. An inscription above the East Gate Dongmen at Shanhai Pass, attributed to the medieval historian Xiao Jian, is translated as First Pass Under Heaven, signifying the traditional boundary between Chinese civilization and the barbarian lands to the north. Although the wall holds cultural significance, many sections have been damaged over time, with roads cut through it and large portions neglected for centuries. In the 1970s, a segment near Simitai, 68 miles northeast of Beijing, was taken down for building materials but was later reconstructed. Other parts have also been restored, including those just northwest of Jiayu Pass, at the western end of the wall, at Wangye Pass 105 miles north of Tianjin, and at Muqianyu about 55 miles northeast of Beijing. The most famous section, at Badaling 43 miles northwest of Beijing, was rebuilt in the late 1950s and now attracts thousands of tourists daily. Portions around Shanhai Pass and Mount Hu, the eastern end of the wall, were also rebuilt by 2000.